This is a quick video to show you how to decimate and rebate textures on a model using Blender. So I'm just opening up Blender. In the splash screen, I'm going to click to get rid of that, tap A to select everything, X to bring up the delete menu, and hit click that to delete the model. Then I'm going to go up into the file menu and import my high resolution OBJ. You can ignore the name that it's called low resolution. It's a 1 million face model that we're going to use as our high resolution mesh and bring it down from there. So it takes a minute or two, or depending on how fast your machine is, to import this mesh. Should be with us in a second. And there it is. It's scaled quite large, so there's some issues with the clipping plane. You can see parts of the mesh disappearing. So what I'm going to do is left click select, tap S to scale, and then 0.1 on my keyboard to reduce it to 10% of its size. And I'm just going to rotate using my middle mouse button and shift drag with the middle mouse button to move the model. We do a couple of quick things: right click and shade smooth. And then I am going to go to, what we'll do is we'll duplicate this model first. Shift D to duplicate and hit the enter key to confirm. And up in the top right here we've got our two meshes, so I'll actually rename this one to high res and then this one to low res. And so what we're going to do for now, we're going to hide the high resolution mesh, and this mesh we're going to add a modifier to. So over on the right here, click the little spanner, add modifier, decimate, and we know that it's about 1 million faces, so we want to bring it down to 100,000 faces, just arbitrarily for this demonstration. So in the ratio, I'm just going to hit 0.1 and hit return, and it will generate a preview for us in the viewport. That's the big panel here where the 3D model is. So it takes a minute or so to do that. I'm happy with that, so I'm going to apply this by clicking the little arrow there and clicking apply. It will take another couple of seconds to apply that, and if you don't apply it, you can obviously adjust the numbers as you go to see if you like the result. So now we do actually have a low resolution mesh now, so that's good. I'm going to go up to the top here and go through to the shading panel and zoom out a little bit. Everything's looking a bit shiny, don't worry. Rotate that round again. Just going to adjust what we can see. What I'm going to do is click the materials tab. I'm going to remove the original material, which is similar to the original high resolution model, and click new to make a new material. I'm going to call that low res material, which is good. And then in this panel, the nodes panel, and zoom out a tiny bit. I'm going to hit Shift A to open the search, click search, type image, and add an image texture. I'm going to connect the color output from that node to the color input on the principled BSDF node here. And I'm going to create a new image. Let's zoom in a bit so you can see that. In the image node, I'm going to hit new. I'm going to say low res 4K color as the name for this file. I'm going to put 4096 and 4096. So I've got a 4K texture. It's going to be simply a black square to begin with. Just so you can see that it's being applied, let's make it a different color. Let's make it the Sketchfab blue. And then, don't click tile, click OK. So now we've applied a new texture map. And now I'm going to show my high resolution model, so I can click these little eyes. So there's the high resolution textured and the low resolution with no texture. What I'm going to do is click. You can keep clicking when there are two meshes in the same space. And you can see up here on the top right that it's selecting different ones. So I'm going to wait till there's the high resolution is selected, and then I'm going to shift click to also select the low resolution mesh, and then go over to this, the render properties, change the render engine to cycles because that will allow us to bake. Go down to the bake options, select diffuse, turn off direct and indirect, select it to active. So the selected is the high resolution, the active is the low resolution. And I'll leave all the other settings as they are for now. And then I'm going to click bake. And we'll stop and come back in a few minutes when this is finished baking the color information from the high resolution mesh to that image file that we just created on the low resolution mesh. Okay, so that took about 4 or 5 minutes to bake, and then to see the results, what I'm going to do is hide the high resolution mesh, and look at that. Looks a bit garbage, doesn't it? So something's gone wrong in the baking process. And now there could be a number of reasons for this depending on what kind of mesh you're using, but I'll show you the trick that I use to get this particular model to bake properly. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to re-enable the high resolution mesh again, and I'm going to switch to, instead of being showing the material preview, I'm going to use viewport shading just so you can see. Now the problem I think that's happening here is that there are parts of the high resolution and low resolution mesh that are overlapping or inside or outside of each other, and that's causing some problems with the baking. So what I'm going to do, if I go to the modifier tab again, so that's the spanner, and add a displace modifier, and I'm going to add a value of 1.5 in the strength. We can keep nudging that up, but I think 1.5 should improve things, which is basically expanding that low resolution mesh to make it a bit bigger. I'm going to apply that, and then we're going to do the same thing that we did before. We're going to select our high resolution mesh, low resolution mesh, make sure that the color texture down here that we added is selected. Go to the render properties. You can leave everything as it is. Oh, actually, what I'm also going to do is update the max ray distance. I found that actually adding 1 meter in here for this particular model did work well. And then I'm going to click bake again, and it's going to right over the dodgy image that we just produced last time. So I'll click bake again, and then we'll take a little break, and then I'll come back and continue. Okay, that took about 5 minutes again to bake the texture map, the color texture map one more time, and I'm going to switch back to the material preview, hide our high resolution mesh, and you can see that that's a much better result just on the head here. We can look at the rest of the model, but you can already see that there is not so many artifacts or things being baked to the wrong place. So that's good. And what we'll do is in this small panel here, you can see the texture map if we scroll the mouse wheel to zoom out. And I'm going to save this image. I'm going to use save as, go to my folder, and I've already named this previously, but you would give it a meaningful name, so low res 4K color. Oh, sorry, that's the name that we input earlier. I'm going to save that color image for later. I'm going to hit the X here on the excuse me, on the image node. I'm going to create one more texture file. I've already forgotten what I called it, but 4K. Let's call it low res 4K normal map, because we're going to bake a normal map now. And so we've got same dimensions, same color. I'm going to hit OK. You can see that it's updated, so we've got a new image to bake to. I'm going to switch to that preview here, so we've got it there. Again, I'm going to re-enable the high resolution mesh, make sure it's selected, shift select the low resolution mesh, go back to this panel and choose this time normal from the bake type, and leave all the other settings the same. So now what we're going to do is bake a normal map to this image file. And there's plenty of things I'm doing a bit wrong here in terms of assigning textures to the file, but what we're going to do is update that later in Sketchfab, because that's the destination that we're working with here. So let's click bake and we should get a normal map. Okay, so that baking took a little bit less time, probably about 1 or 2 minutes compared to the 5 minutes for the color map. You can see the image has been updated here, and you can see the normal map applied to the low resolution mesh here. So first I will save this normal map to my folder. And now we're ready to, we've exported the texture files, the color map and the normal map. We're going to now export the low resolution mesh. We've finished with using the high resolution mesh, so I can right click and delete that from the outliner at the top there. I'm going to do one more thing before we do export the mesh, and that's to apply another displacement modifier with the negative value to the one that we input before. So this will return the mesh to its original, the vertices to their original positions on the optimized mesh. Hit apply, and with that mesh selected, we don't really need to have it selected because it's the only mesh in the file now. I'm going to navigate to File, Export, and I'm going to export as an OBJ, but you could use any other format as well. And we'll give this a name. Let's say low res mesh, and click export. And essentially that's the process in Blender to go from a high resolution scan to a low resolution scan with a baked color and normal map. And then we'll look at recombining these files in the Sketchfab 3D editor afterwards. There are plenty more, like I say, there are plenty more things that you can tweak, because each mesh that you work with will probably be very different. So for example, the bake options, the ray distance, as well as the margin of the texture islands that are being baked, they can all have an effect on the output. We're not going to go into it here, but just to show you the process that you need to click through, you may need to iterate on the process as you learn it too. I hope this has been helpful, and we'll get back to the rest of the workshop now. One more thing that I thought would be useful to show you is the output files from Blender that we just created. So we've got the mesh OBJ and a .mtl file, a material file that's associated with that OBJ. So when you export the OBJ, it also supports an MTL file. And if we had assigned the images correctly to the shader nodes, this would be useful when we're sharing this data package, because that's kind of out of the purview of this particular workflow. I won't cover that. And then we have the normal map and the color map as well. And these are the things that we'll be uploading to Sketchfab and then assigning the color and normal maps to the mesh in the 3D editor.